excited to bring two different hoteliers to the stage this morning that will each share a little bit about their experiences of how they're using technology for both certainly environmentally conscious business practices as well as sound operational practices. Once we hear from both of our speakers, I'll join them back up on stage. We'll have a few minutes for Q&A with our audience. So without further ado, I'm pleased to welcome to the stage Bruce Becker, who is the owner of Hotel Marcel, to tell us a little bit about his story. Bruce, please come on up.
Thank you, Abby. I'm an architect and a developer. I'm a little unusual in that I have an integrated practice. And I have, this is my first hotel. Up until a few years ago, my background was in developing multifamily buildings. And little did I know how complicated the hotel world was. But I also did not have the, maybe the baggage of having been immersed in it. So I took a fresh look at every aspect of making hotels. And it turns out we have created a hotel that has sort of broken all the rules. It's a hotel that doesn't rely on any fossil fuels for its operations. It is a LEED Platinum building. Actually, there are 7,000 LEED Platinum buildings in the United States. Fewer than 10 of them are hotels. So obviously I didn't know what the norm was when I did this. It's also the first Passive House certified hotel, which is a European standard that is really just about making a very efficient building envelope so that you don't need very much energy. So I'll take us through, in 15 minutes, an overview of what we've done and talk about some things that might be translatable more broadly so that we're no longer such an abnormal hotel. You know, one thing that Ian said that resonated with me, obviously he covered a lot of different topics about the future, but he mentioned electrification. And as someone who always looks at the big picture, you know, I don't really believe in silos. I'm making buildings that try to respond to the larger challenges that we have. Electrification is the same thing as sustainability. Sustainability is not having a tag you can put on your door that says, you know, if you don't want your towels laundered, hang them up. It's not about, you know, bulk dispensers of shampoo. It's not about saying that you're committed to the environment. It's about not using fossil fuels. You know, Hotel Marcel is part of the Hilton family. We're part of the soft branded Tapestry collection, and we had 8,000 or 800 pages of standards that we had to follow. I was sort of surprised to see that there really isn't any mention of electrification in I think any hotel standards for any brand, and yet that is the single most important thing to make sure that we have a climate for our kids that you know, is sustainable. So I have a list on this slide of, you know, the good news is there's technology out there that will allow us to make that transition today. It's not some futurist idea, but everything that we've been doing and have done at Hotel Marcel is something that you can incorporate in a hotel this year. And it's just a matter of really willpower. It doesn't cost any more. I'll talk about how these things pay for themselves and actually allow a hotel owner to put less equity into a project than they would for a non-sustainable hotel. So briefly, the technologies that we've used here, some of them are sort of old school technologies, such as better insulation. You know, we have triple glazed windows and we have a high performance ceiling and insulation for the perimeter of the building, so we only need about 20% of the energy to heat and cool the building, which makes it a lot easier to provide that all with electricity. Hotel Marcel also has the first set of air source heat pumps for domestic hot water. Domestic hot water production is usually the gateway drug to fossil fuels because it's takes a lot of energy to use to make your domestic hot water in a hotel. And so Mitsubishi now makes large-scale commercial-grade hot water heaters that are all electric with heat pumps. We also use VRF heat pumps for heating and cooling. That's been well established. 20 years ago you couldn't do that for heating, but within the last 10 years, at least in other areas with other building types, VRF, variable refrigerant flow heat pumps, are now the norm. You only have one system for heating and cooling as opposed to two, and that's an all-electric system. We also use power over Ethernet for shades and for lighting, which is basically a DC infrastructure that also reduces all of the lost energy in converting from AC to DC. And we have a renewable DC microgrid. These are all technologies. For a hotel technology conference, particularly as we see the need for sustainability, perhaps this conference could evolve to really focus on these technologies, which really aren't present yet in the conversation. A renewable microgrid is basically a building that has its own power system, that it can operate independently of the grid, it can make its own power, it can store its own power, and that's something that we've done as well. And then maybe on the simpler end of things, we have an all-electric kitchen with induction ranges. We have a electric dryer instead of a gas dryer. And then we also have an electric hotel shuttle, and we have about 24 EV chargers, including fast chargers. So that's sort of an introduction to the technology. We'll go through. Here's some pictures of the hotel. It's got, the single most important thing that we've done is we've recycled a building, because more and more policymakers, architects, regulators are looking at the embodied carbon in making a building. And we've now learned how to operate buildings very efficiently without the use of fossil fuels. But the process of making buildings is actually the biggest impact in carbon. And if you can recycle an existing building, you can really mitigate that. And so this is a building designed by legendary architect Marcel Breuer, who was one of the leaders of the Bauhaus, taught a whole generation of architects at Harvard. And this was his most visible building that was vacant for 20 years in New Haven, Connecticut. Now it's the Hotel Marcel. It's a 165-room hotel and conference center. We have 7,000 square feet of meeting space and some really nice boutique spaces and amenities with the Hilton brand behind us. This is the building as it appeared when it was built originally for the Armstrong Rubber Company building as their world headquarters. And as it remained empty for 20 years, the world has changed. We don't hear about it a lot here, but there are the generation of our kids and their kids this is like one of their dominant concerns, that we're making the planet uninhabitable for them and their children. The mandate is to stop burning fossil fuels. It's actually a simple thing to do. Elon Musk has done that with his cars, and Mitsubishi has done it with their mechanical equipment. But it's not a matter of just like reducing our use of fossil fuels by 20% in 10 years. We just can't build any more buildings that use any fossil fuels. We're actually increasing every year the amount of fossil fuels being burned on the planet. And the only way we'll reverse that is to stop making buildings that use fossil fuels, which is very easily done. This is my street in Westport, Connecticut, where I live. And on a normal full moon, not even in a storm, we get water on the street. So this is going to get worse and worse until we take this problem seriously. I talked a little bit about Marcel Breuer and his legacy. In addition to making this a very sustainable hotel, it was a historic preservation project. And we actually are proud that we've shown that you can take a design and preservation as a priority, and also that goes hand in hand with sustainability. So just, you don't have to build a brand new building to make it super sustainable. These are the original interiors of the building, which served as an inspiration for the new interiors. We actually reused some of the original elements. The building had asbestos through it, so it had to be gutted, but that gave us an opportunity to put in a new insulation, a new window envelope for the building. But this was our program for reinventing the building. 165 rooms, 7,000 square feet of meeting space. We listed it on the National Register of Historic Places so we could benefit from historic tax credits from the state and from the federal government. And then meeting the standards that Hilton has for the Tapestry collection, which are more flexible than for a hard brand, as you know. But then we layered onto that program our sustainability program, which is LEED Platinum, which we were surprised to find only about a dozen are. Townsend from IHG is going to talk about their sustainability initiatives after I'm done talking. And the thing that's really important about sustainability is it has to be substantive, and it's important to have third-party verification of all of your sustainability strategies. And the U.S. Green Building Council, which manages the LEED, certification, is considered the most respected. But most people don't even try to do it. The Passive House certification is also required for third-party verification. It's actually a much simpler program, which just focuses on the building envelope, how well insulated and sealed it is. We also committed to not use fossil fuels, just following the mandate of those people on the steps. I was at a dinner the other night, and the head of facilities at UConn in Connecticut said that students are protesting, that they don't want any new buildings on campus being built that use fossil fuels. And I think that these people are going to be hotel guests in our hotels soon, and we may find that if we have hotels that use fossil fuels, they're not going to come stay with us. All-electric building, net zero. The other thing we're doing is we're attempting to produce all of the energy we need on site with solar panels, and we're on many days we're already achieving that. We have to monitor that for a year to be able to say for sure that we're net zero. And we use power over Ethernet for lighting, and we have the microgrid. So here's what it looks like. We have 130 parking spaces. We have a lot that is covered largely with solar canopies, which is a nice amenity for our guests because they're covered in inclement weather. And then we have solar panels on the roof. Here's an aerial photograph that shows what that looks like. This is the original building envelope. We went through a program to figure out how to insulate it to reduce thermal migration, and we did an energy model to select different strategies to make the building as energy efficient as possible. And here we are with installation underway for the building envelope and the finished product. One of the things that is a benefit when you do a passive house compliant product is that with triple glazed windows, you're not only insulating the building envelope for thermal transfer, but also for sound. And people are always surprised in these rooms that are 250 feet from the major highway system in Connecticut, I-95 and I-91, that you can stand in this room and you can't hear any traffic. So you get the additional benefit of a higher quality experience, as well as one that's more energy efficient when you insulate your building envelope. Here's some other. We feature the Marcel Breuer chair. You probably all recognize that tubular steel chair, which is the most reproduced piece of modern furniture in the world that Breuer is best known for. My wife Kramer curated all the art, including these handmade textile pieces on the walls that are made from discarded samples from our interiors library. And here's the public spaces in the original lobby for what was the Armstrong Rubber Company buildings. Now we have a full-service restaurant. And here's some of the technology that we're using. I mean, these things are readily available. On the left side, you see the heat pumps for our domestic hot water system that we can use in lieu of natural gas systems. In the middle of this image, you see a stack of batteries. We have 17 battery modules per rack, 4 of them in total inside the building. That creates 1 megawatt hour of battery storage. So when the power goes out in the grid as it's done, we don't have to worry about maintaining a generator. The battery just kicks in, and we have what's known as a microgrid controller made by a company called Agito that allows us to program when we're exporting or importing, how we're using our solar panels. And we have a nice sophisticated inverter to manage the flow of electrons made by EPC. So these are all technologies that allow us to make this a very successful all-electric hotel. We also have, as part of our Power over Ethernet electrical system, we have a touch screen. When you enter the room, it allows you to pick a mood, whether it's social mood or romantic, which lowers the shades. You can control the room temperature. You can change the lighting levels for different lighting circuits and adjust both the blackout shades and the sheer shades. There are also buttons next to the bed that allow you to do this. And this is a screenshot from our microgrid controller portal, and you can actually take a look and see the green line is the solar production over the course of a day. The yellow line shows when we're exporting to the grid. The orange lines are the total electric load from the building. And you can see when the electric dryer is in use that it spikes. But we actually do what's known as peak shaving by drawing from the battery to eliminate the demand charges, which might be as much as half of the electrical bill. So we can manage that. This becomes a revenue generator for us. I mentioned the all-electric kitchen. This is one of the simpler things that we did, just with induction ranges. If you have a conventional hood with a gas range, you're having to provide conditioned makeup air for like 10 times as much air as you normally need for a kitchen because you're always exhausting it. But if you don't have any combustion in the kitchen, you can use a recirc hood and dramatically reduce the energy needs for HVAC for kitchens. And there's no compromise required for our menu. And then we also have an electric shuttle van. Like the building, this was like a 2018 airport shuttle that we had a group called Maxwell Vehicles in California put in a Tesla Model 3 powertrain. And so, we really don't have to have any kind of electrical, any fossil fuel use. We're all electric. And we just commissioned and opened a supercharger station. So we have 12 Tesla superchargers right off the highway, which gives us a steady flow of folks to our restaurant, our grab and go, and they get exposure to our hotel. So in summary, the solution for Hotel Marcel is reflective of really what we have to do for every building. Hotels aren't unique. We have to reduce energy use, recycle buildings instead of build new ones, really insulate them well, ideally make them passive house compliant, use all kinds of technologies, power over Ethernet lighting, all electric high efficiency HVAC systems with heat recovery, occupancy controls, battery storage to reduce peak loads, and then make everything electric, transportation, kitchens, laundry, mechanical systems, and then ideally make all that electricity on site. A few more pictures to show you that there's no compromise needed. This doesn't look like we haven't compromised anything for the sake of sustainability. In fact, it's enhanced the guest experience and our marketability. We monitor everything. We look at how many parts per million of CO2, particularly during the pandemic when folks are concerned about airborne viruses. This is really important. So we can, we had this event, a big gala in our meeting room floor on the 9th floor, and we can look in and see how, this is a a good predictor of COVID, airborne COVID, is if you get above 1,000 parts per million of CO2, it means you're not ventilating enough. So all these technologies make the building safer and more energy efficient. And I did want to touch on the fact that this is not an extra cost. People say, well, I can't afford this. I couldn't afford not to do it because all the incremental costs here, which are not that significant, could be financed with a program called CPACE, the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing, which most states allow. It allows you to take the savings that you would get, say, from putting solar panels on your roof or from having higher value insulation, and that annual savings was just easily quantified with an energy model. If you finance the cost of that and the debt service is less than the savings, you're ahead of the game. You have more cash flow for the property. And this is the case for almost every technology that we're using. So it pays for itself. The IRA, which is coming, as of January 1st, there'll be even greater incentives. You get a 30% tax credit for battery storage and solar, so that makes it even more affordable. And there are also cash payments. If we agree 12 times a year to not operate the electric dryer between 4 and 6 p.m., we get a $100,000 check from the utility, because by managing those peak loads throughout their territory, they can avoid having to pay people to fire up peaker plants, which is really expensive. So it's a revenue stream. And also, if you can save operating costs, you can save $1 of operating costs, it's better than adding $1 of revenue. We have to add $1 of revenue, we have to pay taxes on it, we have to pay our manager, we have their percentage, we have to pay the brand their percentage. But if you save $1 of operating costs, it goes straight to the bottom line. It makes hotels more resilient economically. And then, finally, it gives us a marketing edge. We are finding 80% of travelers care about the sustainability of their hotel stay, and Townsend's going to talk about this from a brand-wide perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. So inspiring, a lot of great insight shared there. We're going to bring up our next speaker, Townsend Bailey, who is the Head of Corporate Responsibility Americas for IHG Hotels. Townsend, please come on up.
Okay, good morning. It's great to be here with you all, and thanks for having me this morning. I'm going to just kind of shift gears and kind of take a look at how IHG is approaching sustainability and how we're looking at it across our entire global estate here as well. And so when we think about sustainability and corporate responsibility, it's not a new topic for IHG. It's something that's been at the core of who we are and how we operate for a long time. And it's not new for the hospitality industry either. Caring for people, caring for our environments is essential to kind of what we do in hospitality as well. But over the last couple of years, particularly following the pandemic and through the pandemic, the importance of purpose for business and being mindful of our impacts has really, really increased and come to the forefront. And we are seeing that in our travelers, we're seeing it in business travel, we're seeing it in our employees. And so beyond even the efficiencies and the energy savings that come with these sustainability improvements, it's also becoming more and more of an essential fundamental expectation of our guests and of our employees as well. And so when we think about our travelers, we're seeing more and more indicating how important this is for them. But in 2022, Booking.com found that 70% of global travelers say they would be more likely to choose a sustainable accommodation, even if they weren't necessarily looking for one when they set out on the booking journey. And then when we look at business travel managers are looking for their suppliers to help them in achieving their company's goals. And over 90%, the Global Business Travel Association has found that over 90% of business travel managers report that sustainability is already a top priority for their companies. And specifically when we think about climate change, 88% of those travel managers say that reducing greenhouse gas emissions from travel is going to be a top priority for the next 2 to 3 years. When we think about our employees, sustainability and corporate responsibility can be a really motivating factor for employees in deciding, am I going to stay with this organization? On the flip side, if you're recruiting new talent, sustainability can make or break that value proposition to new employees of whether they're going to choose your organization or not. And in the Edelman Trust Barometer in 2021 found that 62% of employees surveyed agreed that the organization being highly socially responsible or conscientious about its environmental impact impacts whether they're going to take a job there. On the flip side, another study found that 64% of millennial workers would decline an opportunity with an employer if they didn't feel like it met their social or environmental expectations there too. So at the end of the day, what's becoming really increasingly clear is that when we talk about corporate responsibility and sustainability, it is fundamentally the right thing to do, but it is also fundamentally the right thing to do for our businesses as well. And so in 2021, IHG launched our Journey to Tomorrow, which is our 10-year responsible business plan, and it outlines our 5 top priorities for corporate responsibility and how we're going to be stewards of our impact across our estate, and looking at our people and how we champion a diverse culture where everyone can thrive, and the communities where we operate. And we set a goal to positively impact the lives of 30 million people in the communities where we operate. On climate change, reducing our energy use and our carbon emissions in line with climate science, and I'm going to come back to this one in more depth later. We're also looking at pioneering the transformation to a minimal waste hospitality industry and conserving water and helping to secure water access in those areas of greatest water risk. And these goals are goals that are way bigger than us. And so for this reason, we're also collaborating with large industry associations like the Global Business Travel Association, Sustainability Leadership Council, the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, and the American Hotel and Lodging Association, which this week just announced and launched their Responsible Stay Initiative, which is focused on aligning the industry around our key principles and telling the story of what the industry is doing for, yes, I guess we've got a few folks from AHLA in here, yes. So we're really proud to endorse those principles as well. And that's really looking at energy efficiency, water conservation, waste reduction, and responsible sourcing as well. Because to achieve these types of goals and to meet the society's expectations, they're bigger than any one company as well. So now I'm going to take a little bit deeper dive into our climate commitment and our energy commitments, because this is a place where we really are working with technology to help us achieve our goals across our entire estate. And so our overarching commitment is to reduce our energy use and carbon emissions in line with climate science. But what that really specifically means that we have set a science-based target initiative approved goal to reduce our emissions by 46% by 2030. And if you're not immersed in sustainability every day like I am, the Science-Based Target Initiative is an organization that helps verify that targets are significant and meaningful, and that they align with what we need to do as society to achieve our climate ambitions. So it's aligning with the Paris Climate Accord. It's aligning with what we need to do to maintain global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. So when we set this target, it wasn't what's going to be really ambitious, what's going to push us. It's not like a stretch goal. It was what do we need to do our part to help address climate change. And that's how we got to that 46%. And we know to do that, we're going to have to reduce our energy in our existing estate, and that's kind of what I'm going to talk about specifically today. But it also, and you heard a lot of this from Bruce, and Bruce, what an inspiring hotel, and you've really raised the bar for all of us with what you've done with the Hotel Marcel, so thank you there. But we also are going to have to rethink how we design hotels. What are our brand standards? What are our prototypes for hotels, and how do we make that easy for owners? And so looking at having all of our hotels all of our new hotels by 2030 with 100% with low or zero operational carbon. And then finally, electrification, as Bruce mentioned, is a huge part of that. But electrification only works for addressing climate change if those energy power sources are from renewable energy as well. So optimizing the use of renewable energy, whether it's on-site solar or helping our hotels purchase through power purchase agreements or community solar offerings, renewable energy to make sure that they're powered by renewable energy will be a key part of how we achieve this goal. But when we think about our existing estate, those 6,000 plus hotels that are already built and out there and operating, and how do we help them achieve these goals and the complexity of that entire estate with hotels around the world in different climate zones, from tropical to alpine, from arid to temperate, from urban to rural, to sometimes even completely remote. How do we help them achieve these goals? And each of those as well, each utility, each municipality has its own regulatory structure and systems and challenges. And so many of our hotel owners and operators are the ones there and who understand their local environment the best. And so our challenge is really thinking through how do we enable them? How do we create tools and resources that are going to help them make the best choices for their hotels and their businesses as well? And so at IHG we have a tool called Green Engage. This was acted just as an indication of how long this has been important for IHG. This tool was first developed in 2009, and we continued to update it through the years, and it continues to be kind of the hub of all of our different sustainability work for our hotels. But we've set a goal for all of our existing estate to reduce its energy use by 10% by 2030 as a part of that overarching goal. And each of our hotels, based on kind of their historical energy performance, has a specific target that they can find in Green Engage. They report their energy use monthly through Green Engage, and it helps them measure and report on their energy use. It also has a library of 200 green solutions that our hotels can choose from to help them identify, well, what are some opportunities for them to do? And links to other resources. And so one of the newest resources that we launched this year is called our HERO tool. It stands for the Hotel Energy Reduction Opportunities. And that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about right now. And the HERO tool helps hotels identify, well, what are going to be the best investments for me to lower my energy use and my costs. It takes data that's already been reported in Green Engage. In the process, our hotel owners or GMs add a few more details about their specific facility and the systems that they're using and the operational patterns they have. And then it provides insight into the hotel's energy usage. It also shows them how they compare to other hotels with the same brand and in the same climate zone as well. So kind of throwing a little bit of healthy competition in there too. And then it helps them prioritize which energy conservation measures are going to make the most sense for that specific hotel based on that hotel's facilities, their systems, and the climate that they operate in. And then it provides like an indication of the capital costs, energy reductions, and the payback period. So that hotels can take this information, use it in their 3 to 5 year planning cycle, and figure out, okay, when is it going to make the most sense to make these different upgrades? So this is what the final output looks like for them. It provides them with a list of energy conservation measures, the amount of energy that energy conservation measure could potentially reduce for that hotel, how much it's going to save them in terms of how much carbon it's going to reduce, what the potential cost will this be. This is all indicative, depending on negotiated pricing, et cetera, but what that potential cost could be, what the potential annual savings could be, and then finally what that payback period would be. So hotels can take this information and then put that into their planning cycle and determine what they're going to, where do they want to implement which energy conservation measures, what's going to make the most sense for their business model and their aspirations as well, as we all strive for our larger common goal of addressing climate change and reducing our overall carbon footprint. In addition, once they do choose which energy conservation measure they want to focus on, they can then click on a link here, and it'll take them to a resource page that explains more what this energy conservation measure is, what it entails, what it's going to take to implement it, and links to other resources or suppliers that IHG has set up for them to help them to make it as easy as possible for them to implement these solutions. So that's one way that we're using technology to help our hotels across our entire estate drive progress towards our ambitious goals in addressing climate change. And with that, Abby, thank you.